Today on the podcast, we have founder and CEO of Zero to Infinity, Jose Mariano López-Urdiales. Jose, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jose. Happy to be with you guys. I'm just an aerospace engineer. I'm founder of Zero to Infinity.
Perfect.
Happy to have a chat.
Awesome. So for the people back home and some of the viewers who might not be so familiar with Zero to Infinity, could you give a little background of the company, when you guys started and how you guys started?
So sure. So Zero to Infinity is a company that I founded, and what we do is launch balloons up very high to facilitate access to space. We see it like a shortcut to space. Instead of fighting gravity and fighting the drag of the atmosphere, we use both gravity and the air of the atmosphere to go up. And for the moment, we've been flying payloads that are not crewed, so there's no people on board, but we would like to move towards flying people on these balloons and eventually launching rockets from platforms at the edge of space, which has some interesting advantages over aircraft or ground-based launch.
Absolutely. And so you started, so can you dig a little deeper into the Blue Star technology and essentially how you get from the balloon into something like Sun synchronous orbit or LEO?
Sure. So this is something, the idea of launching rockets from balloons is an old one. It was even done before NASA was founded. There was something called Project Fireside in the US that launched some rockets from balloons from Enewetak Island. But what we're doing is we're redesigning the rocket, because most rockets look almost the same. They're missiles, right? 2-stage, 3-stage, whatever, but they're like thin, sharp, pointy devices that have a lot of thrust at the base and have to fight, the aerodynamic drag. So instead of doing that, what we are doing is we've looked at what's the optimum altitude to start from, and how would the ideal rocket be. And by ideal, I mean the least costly to develop and the least costly to operate, and the least harmful to the payload as well. How would the ideal rocket be if you were launching from different altitudes? Because if you were launching from space, or when there was no air, or let's say that you are launching from the moon, if you think of a lunar lander, or the American lunar lander, or the Russians that took stones, grabbed some samples from the moon and came back, they don't look a lot pointy. They don't have to. You don't have to be pointy if you're launching in vacuum. So where is the threshold where the optimal doesn't look like a pencil? So we found that it's around 25 kilometers. And up there, rockets that are pressure fed are a lot easier to operate. They actually work. Ground, the most expensive part of a launcher is, of course, the rocket engine. And this rocket engine, the most expensive part is the turbopumps. So if you can get rid of the turbopumps by just having pressure-fed mode, which is what Blue Star does, things start looking a lot cheaper than for conventional launchers.
Absolutely. And so do you see a lot of this being more scientific research, or do you plan to stick with commercialization of payloads?
So we're really application agnostic. So if somebody has some scientific payload, they can come to us. Or we also see that like the market for services from space is so much larger than science. Then of course we expect that there will be a lot more people just using this for their businesses. However, in the initial phase, one of the things I didn't mention about Blue Star is that the ride to orbit is very gentle, because the most violent part, the part that shakes the hell out of the payload, is the atmospheric phase. And since you don't have that, you're like an upper stage. That allows you to fly things that would shatter and break in conventional vibrational environments of launchers. So this is going to allow us to fly things that would basically break in other launchers. And the first people to use these are most likely either scientific users or defense users, because they're the ones that are more pushing the envelope of what's possible. So, of course, conventional CubeSats, they can take a ride on any launcher because they're super sturdy. But if you're flying something like an advanced reflector or some special optics that would be very large, very wide mirrors or things that would break on conventional launchers that we could take to orbit on Blue Star.
Mm-hmm.
They might be the first adopters of the technologies, at least of these special options that you have because of the gentler ride.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess right now in your company's life cycle, you would consider yourself a launch company moving payloads up. How do you compare to something like SpaceX or Blue Origin in terms of cost for a payload to go into low Earth orbit? Or if we could talk about that.
Well, the thing is of course, it's a lot more expensive per kilogram
Mm-hmm.
than those rides because those rides are gigantic.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, what
Much
they
to
show,
scale.
yeah. So it's like comparing a bicycle with a freight train or something
Got it.
like that.
Yeah.
But what I think is more fascinating is not so much the cost per kilogram,
Mm-hmm.
but the profit per kilogram.
Okay.
So how much profit can you extract from a satellite in orbit? So
Mm-hmm.
if a lot of your mass of the satellite has to be there just to survive the launch, that's mass that is inert. And a lot of the dry mass of conventional LEO satellites is just there to survive the launch. But if you can launch things that are thinner or lighter, and because of Blue Star, you can get them to orbit. And if you put them on a Falcon 9 or you put them on a Rocket Lab or something like that, it will shatter.
Mm-hmm.
Then that changes the equation, and we think that we're going to be moving more towards those revenue per kilogram more than just cost per kilogram, and you get that basically with larger volume.
Mm-hmm.
and gentler ride orbit,
Yeah.
so that the things don't break so much.
Absolutely. And so are you working with companies right now trying to get them to manufacture? Because I mean, I have to understand that it's a more unconventional, different way of manufacturing when you don't have to take into account the launch.
So we're in conversations with some both government and commercial customers on
Mm-hmm.
how to take advantage of this, and it's a slow process because until we're really getting things to orbit, they're not going to make a huge investment in designing things and building things specifically tailor-made to go to orbit on Blue Star. So a lot of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis is just flying things on balloons to be tested up there, because
Mm-hmm.
with a balloon you can take something to, let's say, 30 kilometers, and then it's over 99.5% of the atmosphere, so it's almost like if it's in orbit, and then you can let them test things and iterate
Mm-hmm.
before they send it to orbit. So this generates a relationship with a customer that is already a real customer, because they're not just signing you a letter of intent. Oh, I'll see you in a couple of years when you got your launcher working. But okay, let's go next month to take this device and need a solar panel, a full satellite or sensor, and we can test them on balloons. So actually the balloon doesn't only help you on the ride to orbit, but it also helps you on the ride to commercial success, because you can already start having real customers along the way and showing real revenue to your investors.
Yeah. So do you see zero to infinity as an alternative to what has already been established in the launch industry, or more of a niche launch?
So we're you there? Yeah.
Yeah. Cut out
So
there for a sec.
we see ourselves as making, not so much grabbing part of the pie from other people, but making the pie bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So enabling things that would not be possible with conventional systems, more than grabbing market share. So the same is true also for Balloon, which is our system that we have a patent for, and we've flown some prototypes that will allow us to take human beings to 36 kilometers in a safe way and with no environmental impact. So is that a competitor to rocket suborbital systems? Maybe, but it's just a different ride. It's like,
absolutely.
is a roller coaster a competitor to a large Ferris wheel? I don't know.
No, it's interesting.
It's different experiences.
Yeah, and so I guess moving into Balloon, is that the next step in your company's process, is to try to hit the space tourism market? Because I know Avery's very involved in the space tourism market.
Yeah, that's something that we've been looking at. I mean, I'm very, very optimistic about that market. It's a lot harder. The conversation with investors is a lot harder because they already know satellites. They know there's been businesses that make money out of satellites. This space tourism, it's only been a few individuals flying up on the Russian Soyuz so far.
Yep.
But potentially we think that that's a market that is going to be really big. And the good thing is that once you enter that market and you have a club of ultra high net worth individuals that have flown with you, is it going to be hard to fundraise for the next phases? Probably not so much, because these people have trusted their lives with you. They're probably
they're going to trust their money, right?
Why not? I mean, once you trust your life on somebody, and you probably so I think once you crack the code and move from flying things to flying people, and we have a roadmap for that. It's not just going to be tourists first. There's going to be first some events or some, remember Red Bull had a guy that skydived. So some things along those lines in the transition period. And then we would like to fly professionals. So we've been talking to the European Space Agency forever, and it's super hard because it's very political. We would like to see European astronauts getting flight experience on balloon before going to ISS or other destinations, because there is a lot of things that are already similar up there. And that's something that we're seeing NASA doing right now. They set up a suborbital office that's going to buy rides on things that don't go to orbit, but go above controlled airspace. So we hope to see those things happening around the world, not just in the US. So balloon is going to service that market in between the current status and flying tour.
That's interesting.
So what do you think is the timeline on that, and how long will all of the testing take with professionals and with unmanned capsules or balloons?
So to be honest, the main timeline is set up by financing.
Normally
Just
is.
So it could never happen. There's a chance that it never happens. And there's a chance that it happens in a couple of years that we start sending up tourists. This is not like going to Mars that requires a lot of research and development and answering lots of questions. This is something that, to be honest, could have happened 100 years ago. 100 years ago, the Soviet Union had the technology with their balloons to fly tourists to the edge of space before Second World War, 100 years ago.
Wow.
So it would have looked a lot more steampunk than what we're doing.
Definitely not as modern, right?
No electronics, but it was feasible. And there's lots of things like this in technology and so in life science and so on. A lot of things that are possible are not done because capital is going to all the places, and smart people are doing all the stuff because that's what pays. But feasibility from a technological standpoint, it's done deal. It's just how do you manage to convince investors to do it? And since I didn't sell PayPal, or my dad is an astrophysicist, he didn't own a gold, an emerald mine. So it's more difficult to get something like this set up, but we're on the path to do it.
Absolutely. And so how for the tourist aspect, how much do you think tickets are going to be? And then when can Avery come on?
So we've taken already reservations at 110,000 euro, and of course it's refundable. And I think it can go down. I don't want to go too much into detail because we do have some ideas on how we could get it down very much, but those would require R&D. Okay, with the setup as we are discussing it, with helium balloons and a guided power flow coming back down and so on, it cannot go much lower than that. But with other technologies that are half-baked, it can go much lower. Wow. However, it's there. Just the market at $150,000. The market is so humongous from all the surveys that have been done that the problem would be scaling up safely, without any issues. Of course, one of the first things you can slash cost is moving from helium to hydrogen. So there you slash like 50,000 or 60,000 cost dollars per flight. in that ballpark. But hydrogen is flammable,
Of course.
so we let other people do that. We're
Mhm.
we're not going to do that.
Yeah, you don't want to be the Zeppelin here.
No, we don't want to do the Hindenburg thing. You're probably seeing there's a company in Florida that wants to do this with hydrogen,
Mhm.
and
Is
and,
that
you know,
the space perspective?
correct? Yes. And Florida is one of the places that has the most thunderstorms
I know.
in
I'm
the
there
world.
right now. It's about to rain in like 10 minutes. I promise you.
Yeah, there's so many lightning strikes, and of course, I'm a big fan of hydrogen from an engineering perspective,
Hmm.
and it's super interesting. And we're gonna see a hydrogen economy. I have friends working on hydrogen planes,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of things that can be done, but you don't want to go too fast, too far.
Yeah.
If you gotta go step by step. So we're sticking with helium for the foreseeable future. Yeah.
Got it. And a lot of that
Interesting.
aspect was
Yeah.
based off of safety.
Yeah.
Got it.
You don't wanna, if there's some risk that you can get rid of when you have other risks like financial market, etc., just get rid of it, and then you can control it. But if you have too much risk, that's a recipe for trouble.
Exactly. That's interesting. And so with the future of zero to infinity, would you want to be categorized as a commercial payload company or as a space tourism company?
None.
Either. Oh, wow.
Those are just so it's space transportation.
Okay.
So it's access up
Yep.
there. Access really, and when I say space, anything above controlled airspace,
Yeah.
anything above where airplanes fly, because that's when it's interesting.
Mhm.
Airplanes is a solved problem, but above where airplanes fly, is it better to do it with balloons or with drones or with? Oh, there's lots of debate.
Mhm.
So we're about taking stuff above where airplanes fly, and the transportation. So is it for marketing or governments that want to send up people, or for science, or for tourism, or those things don't really matter.
Yeah.
That's up to the customer, be the direct customer or an intermediary. So
Got it.
it's like there's a company that makes computers. Is it for video games, or is it for professional work, or for science, or for military? It's just a computer.
It's just a computer.
So exactly. So that's how we see it. We just provide the ride,
Got it.
and we try to make it the best ride,
Mhm.
so that you can do more up there,
Yeah.
and so on.
Absolutely. So now let's rewind a little bit to 2009 at the company's founding. Can you walk us through how the company was founded, how you got involved in this?
Sure. So actually, we could rewind even further back. So in the 90s, my dad was working with. We discussed some potential mission with the European Space Agency and the Russians to grab samples from Venus.
Mhm.
So I had this report about a Venus sample return mission,
Okay.
and that the only way that they could make it work was using a balloon to exit the dense layers of the atmosphere of Venus and then shoot up a rocket there.
Okay.
And I thought, well, Venus is almost as big as the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
If the math adds up to escape Venus from a rocket, from a balloon, it might also add up from here. So that's how Booster got started. And then I was at the International Space University in the year 2000. ISU, I highly recommend it. It's a great program. So you do it was called back then the summer session program. Now it's called the Space Studies program. So we were working there on a report about space tourism. And since I was familiar with the physics of the atmosphere and how the sky gets darker with the altitude and the geometry and how you start seeing the curvature, and the fact that when you're in low Earth orbit, having spoken to astronauts, you don't see the Earth round, you still see just an arc. So it doesn't matter if the arc is like this or like this, it's an arc.
Mm-hmm.
We were working on this report about space tourism. You have to think, this is 2000. This is 4 years before Virgin Galactic was founded.
Mm-hmm.
And we had Peter Diamandis, the founder of the X Prize Foundation and all these things, and Singularity University. And he was there. He still didn't have the money for the X Prize. It was fun. It was interesting. And we were, he had a clever scheme with an insurance company to make it happen later. And with Anusha Ansari helping out. But anyway, we were there working on this report, and I said, well, if the space tourist wants the view, they can just get it with balloons.
Yeah.
And that's that was the origin of it. And then when I was at MIT, I took part in that was in 2004 in a business plan competition. It was called the 50K. Now it's the 100K competition, and I made a proposal about a business using balloons to provide space tourism, because this was just starting and the X Prize had just been won. And then 5 years later, since I had saved a little bit of money and I had a few experience running some other stuff, so I thought, well, maybe it's the time to start. And back then in 2009, it looked even weirder than now. Now I mean, there's like 4 or 5 companies trying to do balloon-assisted launch of satellites. There's Space Perspective and Worldview and Guangxi in China, and a few others trying to do space tourism with balloons. So it's a lot more normal. And now talking about new space, it's a word. Back then, it wasn't even something acceptable, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's becoming more mainstream. So a lot of people say, a lot of the investors and folks that say that we were too early, you know, to start something like this in Europe back then. But you know, you start it when you feel it's the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think we still can beat most of our competitors to market, because it's just easier the way we're doing it than the way the others are doing it.
Yeah.
Since we don't have the benefit of easy access to capital, that may seem like a curse compared to, you know, being funded by the wealthiest person in the world, you know, like Blue Origin. But it's also a blessing in a sense, because it makes you do things in a more cost-effective way.
Much more efficient.
Yeah, so you really care about these things, and we don't see that happening with most VC-backed or billionaire-backed companies.
Yeah, I always love the saying: if you can't afford to make a mistake, you won't make a mistake.
That's right.
That's incredible. And so, I guess moving on to that, we like to ask, you know, people on the podcast. So the podcast is called The Overview Effect. And a lot of what we try to do is to provide the overview effect to a lot of people. Can you tell us a little bit about what the overview effect means to you?
Well, you know, I've only been once to Davos, you know, the World Economic Forum. I was invited by one of my shareholders. So he, instead of going with a girlfriend, he went with me, you know, and I got to speak to a lot of people and meet a lot of these, you know, elites and, you know, famous people and such. And I thought, wow, I want to come back here, let's say in 10 years, but I want half of the people here having experienced the world overview effect. And then the conversation will be truly global. Until then, we are stuck with the wrong kind of elite. I think we really need to change. I see it almost like a Trojan horse, like a virus. So it's something super cool going up there to space, but then it changes you. And we really need that, because I think most of the folks that have a lot of influence in the world don't have a global perspective at all. At all. They may think they have it, but it's like a lot of people that are environmentalists, they are actually like living in cities, and if you put them in the environment, in the forest, they would, you know, be complaining about the mosquitoes and really having a lot of trouble. So we really need to make the fact that we are in a planet something totally visible to the people that have the most influence. I think that's badly needed in this world, and it's something that should be around, just not only in the US, not only in, it should be something global. So I think it's really important that there are space tourism companies that develop outside of the US, because let's say China is so important and so big, and has such a huge share of the world's billionaires, and they make everything that we use, and they can't really fly on US vehicles because of ITAR and such. So we need to develop these things so they don't, and they really have a global perspective. Yeah, I'm very passionate about that, and it's one of the reasons why I focus so much on Bloom, and I think it's going to be a big business and sustainable in itself, but it's just going to have this transformative effect on the world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're just trying to keep the conversation sparked, right? I think that's what you can do at this stage, is to try to
Yeah.
really try to get that idea out. So now, are you flying out of Catalonia, or where do you fly out of?
No, we've done some flights here, but most of our flights we do them from southern Spain.
Okay.
There's we call it a stratoport. Europe's a stratoport. You see in a place called Villa Carrillo, Jaén province. So this place it has ideal weather, so it's not windy.
Got it.
It's
No
very
light,
easy
no thunderstorms like Florida.
No thunderstorms. We have a column of airspace above us, so we can fly through it very easily. There's almost no traffic, so it's very easy to coordinate with ATC.
Good.
And it's just really good for the kind of things that we do. Also for some drones testing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the views from there are magnificent, because you get to see the Mediterranean, the Atlantic, two continents, because you see Europe and Africa. Because it's in southern Spain. You see very tall mountains from the Sierra Nevada, the original one is in Granada, nearby. You see desert-like areas, forests, all sorts of things. And I think that's very important, because it's not just going up there, it's what you see. And if you ask astronauts, there's lots of places that are wonderful to see, but the Strait of Gibraltar, the tip, the southernmost tip of Europe and the northernmost tip of Africa is one of the most interesting, intriguing, and diverse parts to see, and that's near where we fly.
Absolutely. So you take off in southern Spain. Where does it land, and then how do you transport that back?
It lands typically 200, 300 kilometers away from the launch spot, and you just know, but in advance where it's going to land. Okay, so there's so much uncertainty. You don't know, you can't tell, okay, in 2 years if I take off from there, where I'm going to land. You can only get some statistics because of the time of the year, but like a week prior to launch, you already know pretty well where it's going to land, because we've gotten very good at modeling the weather and the winds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's something that we can do better than 100 years ago. 100
definitely.
So that they wouldn't know with
interesting.
reliability where they would land. But besides that, most of the stuff could be done a long time ago.
Got it. And how long does it take to relaunch after retrieval?
Well, right now the gondolas that we fly, we could fly them right away in a couple of days. But for balloon, it's gonna initially will take a long time. It will take like a week or so.
Okay.
And but it will get less time as we get more experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what is most of the time, just like a refueling essentially?
No, so you would inspect the vehicle after the flight. By the way, the balloons, we use them only once.
Oh, do you?
So a lot of people are like, that's probably the biggest cost item in terms of consumables, more than the helium itself. And a lot of people say, oh, but come on, it's just a plastic bag. And we've learned how to reuse plastic bags going to the supermarket. Why can't you reuse it? Yeah. And I say, well, it's certainly easier to reuse a giant plastic bag than it is to reuse a Falcon 1 stage.
Yep.
But it's another capital item that you don't need. So if you have too much money, then you get embroiled in how to reuse balloons. But for the moment, we just buy them from suppliers, and at some point they will either develop a reusable balloon themselves because they sell too many and they want to show us the economics of it, and they want to sell it more expensive, or we will, we can let the market do it, or we can develop it once we're making significant profits. But for the moment, you want to do things with the minimum amount of capital required. So that's why I'm just using once, because just nobody has ever reflown stratospheric balloons.
Yeah.
It's not a thing. You can't buy them for the moment. So why develop them?
Yeah, exactly. Only when like the economies of scale make sense, I guess, really where we start to see that.
Yeah. You don't have to force it. Things happen when they can.
They happen. Exactly. Yeah. When there's enough capital in an industry, there's always going to be innovation there, right?
Yeah. And I think also the overview effect, going back to your question before, is gonna make capital so much more available for space, because all right now it's just a few geeks, that wanted to be an astronaut when they were young, or read science fiction.
People who are doing a podcast in NASA jackets like that.
That's right. And the intersection between these people and the billionaires is small.
Yeah.
But once everybody or most people have been there, well, that changes the equation. So it's going to be much more common.
Of course. Yeah, and I think that's why Avery and I are so close together right now and working on this, is just because we see that, right? And so we're starting, Overview Fund, looking at this, and we know that there's going to be, especially within the next, I would give it 2 years even, you're going to see a huge influx of capital within the industry and the market growing by X-fold.
Looking forward to that.
Me too.
Yeah. I really love the answer. I totally agree with that. I've never really thought that, like, if half the people at Davos had been to space, I imagine it would just be a totally different conversation, because there's a lot of rich people, but if they really understand really that we're all on one tiny precious planet together a short period of time, the conversation could be much, much different. It would be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's badly needed in this world, I think.
Yeah. Sadly, it's needed, but gladly it can be done, right? That's what I like to say.
Exactly.
That's very interesting. And so where do you see yourself spending most of the time in the company?
Well, I'm doing all sorts of things. It's a small group, so there's I would like to spend less time talking to investors, honestly. I think that's like the least productive part of my time.
Mm-hmm.
And with all due respect, sometimes I learn from them, but I would prefer to concentrate on more value-added activities.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Got it. And so
sorry. So what do you think is like the most challenging part of what you do?
Again, persuading investors is the most challenging and least predictable part.
Yeah.
And every effort that we've had at making it a system,
mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll structure it this way, we'll talk to these people, we report in this way, and so on. It hasn't really worked. All the stuff that has worked was serendipity, was unpredictable, random. Okay. Every time that we've tried to put a system in place and procedure and such, it's been a waste of effort. So other things you can control. I mean, you can calculate something and then that's the right answer from an engineering perspective. But with this thing, it's very
can never tell.
weird. Yeah. Human resources is also very challenging.
Yeah.
Because you need to keep the spirits up. You need to provide opportunities to people as they are growing professionally within the company. Sometimes since you don't raise, it's kind of coupled, because you don't raise capital fast enough to provide them growth, and then they end up starting their own companies.
Mm-hmm.
That's great for them. I help them as much as I can, and we've seen very successful entrepreneurs come out of zero to infinity, because we try to pick them well as well. But yeah, I would say it's the human factor that is the most difficult thing. It's not so much the physics or anything like that. That's pretty much the problem.
Got it. And so do you have any advice for someone trying to enter the industry right now, trying to do a cap raise, trying to start their own company?
Yeah, I think it's better that they focus on people that are for fundraising, people that have something in common with them. So they may rationalize that they make the investment in them because X, Y, or Z, or because of this spreadsheet or this marketing, but that's all real rationalization. Is not really why they're doing it. So if there is something, so if they came from the same school, or they have the same last name, or they have the same hobbies, or those kinds of things, those are really much more important than what it looks. So maybe if they're part of your same tribe or something like this, that would help.
Yeah.
And also, I think beware of the web pages of the VCs where it says that they invest in people and great ideas, and it doesn't matter so much if you are producing revenue and all this.
Mhm.
Don't believe any of that. That's all BS. You want to provide them an alibi.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that if the company goes down, they can say, look, but Google invested, or look, but they already had this curve of revenues or something like this. So much more important than showing them how big is going to be the market and how wonderful your team is and your technologies. Make sure you cover their asses, okay? That you provide them a good alibi. Otherwise, they probably are not going to take the plunge. And this is talking about investors that are investing other people's money. If they're investing their own money, it's different. That's a more sincere conversation. You can be sincere then. Don't be sincere with the ones that are, just think about making sure that they are not going to be worried about their job. Otherwise, they won't do it. That's kind of how it works.
That's interesting. Awesome.
Yeah.
And so, when can we be expecting the first flight for tourism? When? Yeah.
No.
When can we help you sign people up?
So it's really 2 years from securing all the funds that are required.
Okay.
And the thing is, we know how much is required to do it. This is not like Virgin Galactic that they needed to raise, and they didn't even know. They had a big raise back in 2009 from Abar investment from the UAE, and then they had an additional 100 million, and they needed to go public, and they don't really know. We know how much we need, but it's going to be 2 years from securing full funding, and it's kind of hard to sorting it for tourism.
Of course.
And
it's interesting. Yeah, and I guess to Avery's point, when can we help you sign people up?
We can have a parallel discussion about that.
Beautiful.
For sure.
Yeah,
if you know people that are willing to go and would like to be part of the experience, we can definitely. It's always very useful to start talking to customers and making sure that our ideas of what will be done up there is what they really want to do, or the training, the families, all the surrounding things, that we're getting them right, and that friction with reality is very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, would love to have another conversation at some point.
And hopefully, whenever we're in Spain next, we'll definitely let you know.
Yeah. Yes. It's gonna be a while with this COVID thing. Hopefully we'll. Yeah. Where? So you are in Florida, and?
So originally, I live in New York, but I'm only in Florida because of COVID, which was probably the worst mistake.
Oh.
Yeah, 15.3 thousand cases.
Yes. And Disney World's open.
Whoa.
Yeah, Disney World is open. Yeah.
If you're not first, you're last, right?
It's we're gonna see. Maybe it will disappear, like somebody said.
No, like that.
Yeah.
It's like that. Maybe it will disappear. We don't really know why viruses stop. There isn't much real hardcore science on the math of why they stop. So if we don't know for existing viruses, we don't really know what's gonna happen. So
wow, yeah, it's pretty great.
You get experts of all colors. You get experts. There's a whole gamut of there's a whole spectrum of different experts advices from anything to anything. So it's unclear. I hope it disappears, but I'm wearing my mask.
Exactly. That's all you can do. 6 feet and wear a mask. Awesome. Well, Jose, unless you have anything else to say, Avery, I think we hit our 30-minute time. But
okay.
We really appreciate you having you on. It was great conversation, and we'll definitely have a parallel conversation on moving forward.
Okay.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jose.
Take care.
Thanks so much.
Great talking to you.
Hasta luego.